Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nix coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. I want to show you guys how you can mix catchy TikTok vocals that can grab a listener's attention quick right away. So let's go over the material that I have today. I'm not necessarily interested in TikTok, but what I like about TikTok most definitely is that it shows us where humanity is at right now. You know, there's nothing wrong with it, you know. I just believe that as an engineer, as a producer, you need to be socially aware, or what people say, you need to know what the streets want.
Feeling like in my ear, about to be 20 and in 22. Young nigga tryna get to it, tryna stack in, tryna stack all the loot. They be like, bro, keep going, still keep grinding, don't ever give up. They be like, bro, keep going, just keep grinding, don't ever give up. Feeling like in my ear, about to be 20 and in 22. Young nigga tryna get to it, tryna stack in, tryna stack all the loot. They be like, bro, keep going, still keep grinding, don't ever give up. They be like, bro, keep going, just keep grinding, don't ever give up. I got a dream and I'ma chase it just like I take paper. I don't fuck with niggas and I don't fuck with haters. Nigga be worse than snakes, nigga be alligators. You nigga be worse than Troy, you might do be the Raiders. I had to debate a couple things before. I had to just see that you change the war.
All right, so the very first thing I want to talk about is let's look at the actual beat in itself. Just look at, you know, usually if you want to, you know, draw the listener in, you know, you should be picking beats that have some space, right? Pay attention to the overall rhythm. This beat is very smooth, right? And I think it's also important to pick like some music that's kind of engaging. It kind of makes you visually think of something. When I listen to this beat, the first thing I think of is like the beach, having fun. And pay attention to how the artist, he actually flowed in a way that was kind of like matching the beat, especially right here. You know, he kind of did like he did the same pattern that the beat did, right? So that's a part of, you know, making those catchy kind of like engaging TikTok vocals. It has to be like a kind of like a rhythm, you know, like a kind of like how a baby moves, or, you know, kind of along the lines of where it sounds open to the listener to jump into the song. Like, hey, you know, this artist is rapping, but he's giving me that little space right there where I can, like, you know, come into it. 22, na, 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 na. So that's very important, you know, picking beats that have space, that aren't too crumpled up, that allow the artist to breathe and let the listener come in. And then the next thing I would say too is also to not use too much of aggressive compression. I visualize this in a way specifically where it's like, okay, it's like a house, right? Which one is more inviting? A house that is bright, that has a bunch of lights, that's up front, or a house that is kind of dark and cold and doesn't have any lights in it? So I see that in the same way with this mix right here and compression. I generally try to use a slow attack, right? Let more of the transient come through so the actual song sounds bigger, more opening and inviting for the listener. Even on the background vocals, I wasn't doing too much aggressive compression. So this is like my lead vocal right here. And let me pull up one of the compressors from my background vocals.
I got a dream and I'ma chase it just like I take paper. I don't fuck with niggas and I don't fuck with haters. Nigga be worse than snakes, nigga be alligators. You nigga be worse than Troy, you might do be the Raiders. I had to debate a couple things before. I had to just see that you change the war. Everything now, I got a better vision. Try to teach you, but you ain't wanna listen.
So being a little bit more moderate with your compression is a great way to actually open the signal. So it kind of gives the listener a way where they feel like, hey, the door is open. Like, I can come into this song. You know, if you're sometimes overly compressing and you're crushing your vocals, it can make everything literally just sound smaller. I want the listener to imagine that this is a very big space that is wide, but even though it's still a big space, it's open, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a field or like a beach, right? That's what it's kind of giving me, like this song is like a beach vibe, right? And the next thing that I wanted to talk about too is kind of getting your sibilance under control, but also understanding that like sibilance is also a tool as well. It's kind of like the impact. It's kind of like that sharp pokiness, you know, kind of like, you know, kids when they're in like a classroom, right? And they have like another kid poking them and say, hey, you want to go do this? Like, this is what I kind of thought about with this song, right? So I actually used some of the sibilance, right? With the de-esser. I didn't overly de-ess it, right? Which would have made the the vocals sound a little bit more closed and less inviting, right? But what I did is like pay attention to my reverb. I used the plate reverb, which in its nature, just like the way a plate sounds, it's kind of somewhat, you know, brash a little bit. That's kind of what the material is. It's like literally a sheet of metal, right? And what I did right here is I boosted up the treble a little bit, right? And I was just pretty much this whole time just hunting for ways to excite the top of the mix, right? I wanted to make it sound sunny. I wanted to give it a little bit of hair, right? So if my mix has a little bit of hair on it, then a little bit of frill, a little bit of frizz, then the listener will also kind of like feel something creeping up on them a little bit, right? Which kind of like makes them curious as to why the texture of the song even feels like that, right? And then look at my reverb. I also did a very steep cut, right, on the lows, because once you start reverberating your lows, it will actually make your song just overall sound a little bit smaller, right? And the most important thing for me here too with this mix, and trying to make it like a catchy, open, and inviting like TikTok vocal, right, is the fresh air that I used on the mix bus. And you know, saturation is a very good way of, you know, using less reverb, less delay, because you can actually hear everything better. You know, there's more content in the, you know, top part of the entire mix, right? So it's letting me keep my vocal dry. But let's just pay attention to how it feels like this mix became way less closed when I took the saturation off the 2 bus.
Don't ever give up. I got a dream and I'ma chase it till I take paper. A couple days before I had to just see that you change the world. Everything now, I got a better vision. Try to teach you, but you ain't wanna listen. That not my dog, but now my dog went missing. It ain't my fault, little bro, you ain't had no loyalty. And that little bitch, that my brother, that my fucking Z. And if you try the bread, then I'm gonna put you on the team. Feeling like that my year, about to be 20, and then 22. Young nigga tryna get to it, tryna stack M, tryna stack all the loot. They be like, bro, keep going, just keep grinding, don't ever give up. They be like, bro, keep going, just keep grinding, don't ever give up. Feeling like that my year, about to be 20, and then 22. Young nigga tryna get to it, tryna stack M, tryna stack all the loot. They be
So that was my main goal of this video here today. I just wanted to talk about how, you know, sibilance is actually not necessarily a bad thing if you know how to use it, right? I used the bright reverb. I didn't overly aggressively DS, but you can kind of hear like that frill, that little tss, the little hairs, you know, that the lights, how the lights are starting to sound like they're brightening. And yeah, come into this song, let's have fun. We're at the beach. So that's very important as an engineer, you know, having that visual direction, like what type of atmosphere is this song making me think, and put that atmosphere actually into the music. That's why I always talk about putting your heart into the music, right? Because if I would have just heard this song and say, yeah, I need to clean up a little bit of mud and a little bit of this, without necessarily trying to understand what picture am I trying to paint here, I would have been lost, right? But you can hear like it sounds very open and very engaging, and that's not something that you can do in one plugin. It's an overall mindset that you do, right? How I saturated my 2 bus, how I purposely picked that type of plate reverb that was bright, how I purposely also wrote off the low, you know, aggressive low end on my reverb to make sure I wasn't reverberating the lows, and how also the beat selection as well is very important. I'm gonna do a video talking about beat selection specifically. And you know how you should pick the proper beat that's going to complement you. I will do a deep dive into that, but I just love how today it was just very obvious, you know, what was going on here. You know, you see the space right here, and how the artist, you know, he conformed his flow to that space, right? So he was giving the listener a way of interacting with the music, and that's always very important in the social media age. You know, when people are looking at your music, they need to feel like it's a portal to your life, a portal to your experiences, a portal to a new world. This beach 22, like they have to feel like that, right? And a part of that too is also compression, right? Not using too much fast attack, or not using too much compression in general, right? Keeping the original signal very open, very open. And, you know, I just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. I really do appreciate you guys. And lastly, let me say one more thing, right? I used my reverbs in a very strategic way. I had overall in this mix, I had very short reverbs, right? So 1 second right here, like not even 1 second, right? To create my little space. And even on this reverb, my little bigger reverb, pay attention to how I stereo imaged it using the time, the short amount of time, and also how I made it a little bit wider using the S1 stereo imager. So, you know, a part of, you know, blowing up in the social media era is having people be able to feel like your song is a person, right? I made this song upfront and open. We always love people like that, you know? Everybody loves somebody like that. Oh yeah, you know, you real, you're so upfront, you're so open about who you are as a person, right? So that's why I always see the music as like kind of a person. Whenever I'm listening to a song, I'm mixing the song, I ask myself, yo, if this song was a person, and it walked into the room, would I like this person right now? Like, would I enjoy this person's company? So I think that's a part of you also visualizing it as well. You know, try to personify the music. Try to give the music certain characteristics that you feel like it are appropriate for the message it's trying to put across. So I just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. I think this was something important today to talk about, you know, and I just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my family. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.